Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. Unexpected upheavals in the geopolitical landscape, the wanton destruction of ancient cultures and countries that's forcing millions of people out of their homes and their homelands, and surprising election and referendum outcomes. If there's one underlying message that's been screaming to be heard in the wake of the extraordinary chain of events headlining the news of late, it's that we are all being tasked with expanding our awareness, raising our consciousness, and, in the words of today's guest, Dr. Synthia Andrews, showing up as all of who we are. Our world is in transition. Complacency won't cut it anymore. Whatever normal used to be, for most of us, it isn't anymore. If you're overwhelmed with anxiety for the future or paralyzed by personal challenges, fear, pain, or loss, stay tuned. Author and licensed naturopathic doctor Synthia Andrews joins us today to share how you can learn to navigate any challenging life experience, overcome limitation and adversity, manifest your highest personal potential, and expand your awareness through 8 powerful energy-based practices outlined in her new book, The Path of Presence. Synthia Andrews, welcome.
Hi, Sandie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on the show tonight.
Oh, it's good to be speaking with you again. It's always good to speak with you, Synthia. So let me start by saying that your work as a licensed naturopathic physician focuses on the emotional and spiritual dynamics in health and healing. You're the author of several books on energy, healing, and consciousness, including The Path of Energy and The Path of Emotions. Now, on August the 15th, 2015, as you were writing the latest book in that series, The Path of Presence, your world was shattered with the middle-of-the-night phone call that every parent dreads. During the events that followed, you relied on the 8 practices mentioned earlier that feature in this book to illuminate your path. Tell us what happened at that time.
Well, actually, yeah. So I was writing this book, The Path of Presence, and I was really engrossed in these practices and how they can help you express your authentic self in a greater way in the world. And my daughter was in a near-fatal car accident, so in the middle of the night I received this phone call. And every parent understands what that moment is when you're realizing that this is something really serious. Nothing good comes in the middle of the night. And the ride into the hospital, not knowing whether she was going to still be alive when I got there, really shifted me into a different state of consciousness. I was in a very present moment awareness where you can feel every movement of air anywhere, in the world, it feels like. And in that state, I really stretched out and found her. I found the feeling that was her, that was separate from everything else in the world, and knew in that moment that she was alive and that she was going to make it through this. And from that, all of the rest of the pillars, and so that is the first pillar of presence, which is the pillar of being in the present moment, of awakening present time awareness. And throughout the weeks that we spent in the hospital, and with the very uncertain outcome that she had, we went through all of the 8 pillars and how they expanded your ability to handle and understand and be effective in the moment.
Now, you've written several books, but during the writing of three of them, the three in that series, The Path of Energy, The Path of Emotions, and The Path of Presence, you experienced a number of synchronistic life experiences, each time that tested every principle you were writing about. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I hope it isn't that every time I choose to write another book that I'm not going to have to live it, because the next book I want to write about is on dying. And so I'm hoping that isn't right around the corner for me. But, I think that we have to, I think that for myself, when I put something out into the world, I have to know for certain that what I'm putting out is true for me. And if there's any part of me that doubts any bit of it, then I have to live it before I can put it out. And so I think that I called that to myself in some ways. And I mean, obviously I didn't call my daughter's accident to myself, but the synchronicity of, why I was choosing to write the book at that time, why these things were on my mind to put down on paper. Time, maybe not so linear, maybe woven in different ways than we can really appreciate.
Well, I guess that's really what you call impeccable, if somewhat selfless research. So let's talk about these 8 energy-based practices that you say are the keys, are the pillars that we can teach us to learn how to navigate any challenge in life experience. What are they?
So there are 8 of them. The first one is the pillar of being, and it is accessing present time awareness. So it really requires that you are inside of your body, that you are using your body as a vehicle in this physical realm, and that you have, to some degree or another, come to terms with death, with the relationship with death. When death becomes an ally, it allows us to stop always running every minute, trying to be more, do more, fit more in before we die. When we are very comfortable with the presence of death in our life, then we're free and we're enough, and we don't have to push so hard. And we have free attention. We have the ability to use our attention on other things. So the pillar of being is really the first one, and then there is connecting to the here and now, in this moment, connecting to the people, knowing that we're part of something larger. We have a holographic awareness of our place in the larger universe. We have grounding, which is more than just being in our body. It's understanding ourselves as belonging to Mother Earth and being a part of the physical matrix of it's this reality that we're in. And then we have the pillar of centering, which is coming home to ourself, the pillar of balancing, which is managing our boundaries and knowing what is inside and what is outside, the pillar of aligning so that we can align with higher purpose and align with the manifestation of our dreams, the pillar of clearing, which is letting go of our traumas, the trauma body that we all live with, and the pillar of honoring. So that really is divinity awareness and losing our carelessness of life.
Well, I want to talk about the pillars in a little more detail later in the show, but first, how did you come to identify these pillars?
It actually happened in a vision that I had after my Native American mentor had died, and I was really wondering about his impact in my life and how his presence in the room changed the room without him saying anything different than anybody else. And I was really kind of looking at what it was about him that was different. And I had this vision of a sweat lodge with 8 poles, which is, the structure of the lodge, and there's 2 poles in each direction. And as I looked at the poles, each of them became a pillar, and I kind of saw the whole thing. And then my job was, after seeing it, was to figure out how to describe it and explain it and put it down in a way that didn't sound, pretty, cliche or simplistic or overly complex either, because I can go to overly complex pretty quickly.
So when you talk about presence, can you define what you mean by that? Because there is a lot of confusion about what that means.
Yeah, the first time I presented this in a class, I asked people to think of someone with presence, and I was expecting, maybe Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela, and instead I found that people really were thinking of people who were either powerful because of self-importance and because of the power that other people give them to be important, or they were thinking of people who had charisma, who were glamorous, who had a persona of what they wanted to be seen as, that kind of confused people as to who they really were. And what we're really talking about presence is being, it's your soul force, really. It's the spiritual force, your emanation of who you are at your essential self that projects into the world and transmits who you are to everyone around you. And people who really have developed their relationship with their authentic self and these 8 pillars, in whatever way that they see them, when they're in a room, the transmission that they put out changes the people in that room. The people see themselves differently and see their relationship to the larger world differently, not by anything that person says, but just simply by the transmission that they put out. And that's what I call presence.
I think many people have difficulty even understanding what their authentic self is.
Oh, I so agree with you. I think all through the book I'm talking about the authentic self, and then I had to actually put in a chapter on how do you find that? How do you know what it is? Because we have so much confusion about it. And, really in its most basic thing, the authentic self is just who we are without all of the conditioning and programming and shoulds and oughts and have-tos that we carry based on the families we grew up in and the school systems and the culture and the other things like that.
You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with author Synthia Andrews about how expanding our awareness and cultivating presence can help us overcome limitations and adversity. Let us come after this break.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
My name is Meera Batra, and this is How I Live United. Many families have come to America for a better life. I advocate for these families with United Way. United Way empowers them to see opportunities available. We help them get involved with their kids' schools and network within the community. My name is Meera Batra. I help families see opportunity and succeed. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Synthia Andrews, you say that how we use our feelings and our intuitions, the manner in which we pursue our dreams, is determining the quality of the present and the future of Earth. Now, tell us more about that.
If that could go into such a discussion about our most recent political upsets. But, each of us... I mean, I think there's two things that I think that drive people more than anything else. One is the need to create. We need to have creative expression. It's the closest we will ever have to understanding what it feels like, our God essence is that creative moment. And at the same time, we also have a strong desire to make a difference in the world, to do something that after we leave will benefit other people, or while we're here will benefit other people. Like those two impulses are really very strong. sometimes they get confused with self-importance, and our ego becomes unbalanced. You know, the ego is actually a pretty wonderful thing that helps us fulfill our dreams, but it can also become unbalanced and really get us lost in self-importance and things like that. So when we're pursuing our dreams out of a place of that imbalance, we're creating the problems all around us, obviously. We're creating the imbalances in the earth, the imbalances in society, the economic disparities. And so I think that we need another level of consciousness as we go to pursue our dreams. We need to be pursuing those dreams not just to have a more comfortable life and just to be more important and all of those things we have to let go of and think about what each thing that we're doing brings to the future generations.
You know, I've been preparing for this show all week, reading your book, and I've been struck at how timely my reading of it is in terms of the big landscape out there. And there was one part where you said, you are part of an awakening. You are realizing that relieving the problems in your life and in the world require that you shift more than just your way of thinking, but also your way of being. I mean, this is such an important message, particularly right now. Do you think that people are willing to listen to that?
You know, I think one of the most encouraging things about what is happening in the political scene here in America right now is what's happening with the kids. I think the younger generation is very much in tune to this and very much looking for a way to have purpose in the world that is self-fulfilling and fulfilling in a bigger way, and in being, you know, changing how we are. I think that's absolutely part of the program of this younger generation coming in. Very special people, really.
I agree with you. Now, in the book, every chapter is prefaced by the ongoing story of, you know, how you and your daughter progressed through those, you know, early days of healing. And I have to say, that was so riveting that I found myself, you know, after a few chapters wanting to jump ahead, read what happened to Erin next, and then go back and read the previous bits that I'd skipped. Because, I mean, it is the kind of thing that every parent dreads. And, you know, you were, as any mother would be, you were mama bear at that time. And every protective instinct, you know, was calling to you. And, you know, I love your honesty in the book where you talk about, well, for example, the pillar of connecting and how you realized that you wanted to fight for your daughter and to get her the pain meds that she needed, and you weren't connecting very well with the people that were responsible for giving her those. Can you share a little bit about that? Because it does seem to have been such a lesson all the way through.
Yeah, you know, it is true that kind of did come up all the way through. And the first time it really presented itself in a big way is when we were at the ER, and she was back there. We were waiting to go back. We had been allowed back for just a moment to see her, and then there was a big car accident on the highway, and we had been sent out again. And so I'm standing there, you know, knowing that she's hurt, that she's alone, that, you know, it's all confusion, that no one's with her, and I'm just asking to be back with her. And the guy at the front desk says, no, you know, can't go back. And I'm getting more and more upset, and you know, I want to go back, and no, you can't go back. And at one point I said, look, I'm her mother, I want to go back. And he looks at the computer screen and he says, well, you know, she's 32 years old. And at that moment, it's like I literally wanted to leap across the desk and just rip him to shreds. And instead, I stepped back inside of myself and I looked at him and I picked up, you know, like I read what he was really all about, and you could see the tension in his jaw and the clenching of his fist and the puffing of his chest, and I could really see that he had a job he had to do, and he was going to defend that job to the end. And I also understood that I was mirroring him exactly because I had a job to do, and I was going to defend it to the end, and one of us had to shift. So I kind of pulled all my energy back in and then sent from my heart just a heartfelt appreciation to him, just made a connection to him from my heart. And then I said, look, she's 32 years old. She's back there. She's afraid. She's hurt. What can you do to help her? And it's like immediately he melted. He, got someone to take me back, and the whole thing was over. And until we can come to that moment of just being willing to look past the defensive postures, look past all the things that we're trying to prove to each other and ourselves in the world, and just relate to each other as people. You're a person, I'm a person, this is the situation, how can you help me? And that had to carry through all the way through the book.
One of the things that struck me too is, how little we pay attention to some of these concepts. I mean, connecting is so important, as you just outlined. I mean, you tell the story of Erin's horse, Emerson, and the connection between she and Emerson, and how Emerson was even mirroring some of this. I've heard that our animals do take on certain physical things for us. Why is it that we skate over all of these important concepts in life? I mean, how can we be more present to this importance of connecting, really connecting?
So, this was really what brought me to the book originally. Is my entire life I had been fascinated with subtle energy. Since I was really like 11 or 12 years old, this has been a focus for me. And I've been lucky that I've been able to turn it into a career, written books and teach people energy awareness and use it in my work. And I came kind of to this almost crisis moment of, and what does it really do? How does it really help anybody? Which is what opened up this whole idea of writing this book, because that's the missing piece. The missing piece is being aware of what is outside of just the physical material reality and extending into the world of energy that is interwoven with the physical world, that is just part of the physical world, but in a different frequency. And, as soon as we start tuning into that, as soon as we start feeling that, we begin to expand our awareness and we begin to pay attention more. And suddenly you walk outside, and instead of, just carrying all your thoughts in your head and having like Pigpen, from the Snoopy or Charlie Brown comic strip, where it's just all of this stuff moving around you all the time that's generated from within you. All of that is clear, and you have free attention, and you can see, oh my God, that bird, he's flying in rhythm with the wind, and he's flying with, in a landscape that I'm a part of and that I'm interacting with, and I can feel that bird actually inside of my energy field, and everything begins to change as soon as you start extending out in that direction. So
this pillar of being, the first pillar, and you explained about what presence really is for you. So part of having presence is to be present, to be in the moment. Yeah. So the biggest challenge, as you point out in the book, to present time awareness is the lack of command over where our mind is. How do we keep our focus in the here and now?
Mm-hmm. So the gateway to the here and now is the body. The body is always living in the here and now. And if we can begin to practice two things that I talk about in the book is conscious breathing, which is just using our breath to bring our mind into our body, and keeping our sense of awareness anchored in the body, and then using the felt perceptions of the body, which is basically the body's language for all the information that it's picking up, because the body is energetically wired. It's continually picking up energy information, and then that gets translated into sensations, into emotions, into intuitions, into hunches and gut feelings, and all different kinds of stimuli. And so when you stay in your body, you have access to all that level of information, and you have access to that information in the present moment. So really, present moment or present time awareness is really body awareness.
I just want to digress slightly, because at the beginning of each chapter, you have a number of, you have like the pillar, the awareness, the challenge, the relationship, the gateway, the gift in that particular pillar. And I didn't fully understand then what you were doing with that. Can you explain a little bit about all of those aspects of that pillar?
Mm-hmm. Well, what each pillar really does is shift our awareness. And so, in each one of the pillars, there's a different type of awareness that we're accessing. And let's stop thinking about that kind of in a mystical way and realize that we shift levels of awareness about 10 million times in every single day. And the most obvious being, sleeping and waking is a shift of awareness, but we are continually shifting into different kinds of awareness. So in the pillar of being, we have present time awareness. In the pillar of connecting, we have holographic awareness, which is the awareness that we are part of a larger whole and have access to the information in all of the whole just through shifting our awareness. So each one of them has a specific type of awareness, and then each one of them has a specific type of challenge that keeps us from being able to attain that level of awareness. In the pillar of being, it is the ability to manage your attention. Our attention is always being drawn to the past and the things that we didn't say that we wanted to say, or the mistakes that we made that we can't correct anymore, or how are we going to fix this, or is it drawn into the future and what we're afraid is going to happen, and will we be able to manage that, and all of the things. And we're never, we're drawn to where other people are rather than the person, the place and the people that we're with in the moment. We're constantly being pulled out of our body into our computers, into our phones, into our whatever. So the challenge of present time awareness is really the command of your attention. And the relationship, as I said before, is death, and each of the pillars has a relationship to something. And when you understand what the relationship is and begin to negotiate the relationship, it's much easier to find that awareness of that pillar. And then
you're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest is Dr. Synthia Andrews. We'll be back in a few moments after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, I found a toy dinosaur over on the playground by Smith Street. It had this phone number on it, and, well, I just wanted to make sure the dinosaur made it back to its little owner.
When I found the little sippy cup, I just had to give you a call. It's for a kid, you know?
I know my son gets super attached to the smallest things, even a fire truck, and I'd be happy to drop it off.
We'd do anything for kids, yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Synthia Andrews, let's take a look at pillars 3 and 4, which are grounding and centering. I tend to think those two as being a little bit sort of interchangeable. Do you agree?
I think that they are interconnected in a very deep way, but I don't think they're exactly interchangeable. I think about the pillar of grounding as really our relationship to Earth and Earth as a conscious being. I think that it's, we don't really have a sense of Earth as being anything except a lump of rock that things grow on. And in fact, I believe we live in a conscious universe, and I believe that all parts of the universe are conscious, and the Earth is a conscious being. And I think Native cultures have always known that, and I think that is the awareness that is needed at this time in order to overcome the ecological damage that we've done. So for me, the grounding is really about being part of Earth, being part of Earth's family. And centering is about your unique individual spiritual connection that resides within the center of your heart, the center of your being, that connects you to the Earth and to sky, Earth and sky, or our spiritual and Earth connections. And so I think of centering as being more personal, perhaps, than grounding.
I'm glad you mentioned the Native Americans, because some years ago you introduced me to your good friend Tiokasin Ghost Horse, and I was doing a series at that time called Inside the Mind of God, when I was interviewing all kinds of people about the concepts of God. And I had to say that his interview was the most profound, had a really profound effect on me. What he had to say about our relationship to the earth, to nature, as far as he's concerned, it all is God. And I think that we have gone so far away from that. And with our technology, we spend so much time away. We're in the airwaves all the time. We are not grounded in the earth.
No, and not at all, and not grounded with a perception of what Earth is. We have to shift our perception of what Earth is to begin with, and that is, I love Tiokasin's take on it, that God is creation. God is creation, and so if you're sitting there in that moment with it, it's a completely different experience.
So how would you recommend that we begin to reconnect with the earth?
This has been an ongoing conversation that we've been having with Tiokasin and a number of other Native people at this time, especially with what's happening in Standing Rock right now out in North Dakota. The first thing is, not to romanticize it and not to think that, you're going to go out into the woods and there's going to be confetti and trumpets and welcome home, but to be able to go out, to leave the distractions behind, to observe and witness and be a part of and honor what you're seeing in the natural world. And so really it is about an exchange, an energetic exchange that happens between you and nature. And in one of the chapters in the book, I talk about how things on our farm began to change once we started taking this approach, once we started going outside and really interacting with what we saw and what was out there, rather than walking through it to get done what we had to get done. And it was most profound. It was, there was one day I was walking to the barn with a wheelbarrow of manure, and I saw a little red-winged blackbird lying on the ground, and I thought, oh my God, it must be hurt, and so I kind of sank down to the ground next to it, and was waiting for it to freak out any moment. Didn't have my glasses on, couldn't see what was wrong with it. But it looked like there might be wire wrapped around it, so I just reached my hand over and took it down along the wing of the bird to what I thought was the wire, which turned out just to be a piece of grass. And this bird sat there and let me more or less pet him. And then I sat back and I looked at him and I just thought in my head, well, what's wrong with you? What do you need? And he preened his feathers and flew about 4 feet in the air, sat down again, and then a few minutes later flew away. And I was just sitting there in complete confusion, like, what just happened? And what happened was the acknowledgement that we were interacting with nature in a different way. It was pretty remarkable.
You know, when it comes to grounding, I think you say that many people are not grounded because there is pain in being grounded. And so they would rather avoid the pain.
Yeah, and that is the challenge to grounding, is that you have to be willing to feel the pain. And we try, so our bodies are not always comfortable places to be. We have trauma memories in our body. We have muscle tensions and pain, and we have many different things. And we try to avoid that pain with pills or with diversion or with whatever ways that we can not to be with it. And so the first part of grounding is having to be willing to be with your pain. And one of the bigger pains really is the grief of what we are doing to Earth, you know, the grief of what's happening here on this planet. And that isn't an easy thing to take on. I hear people all the time say that rather than, you know, they're not going to look at this because it's too painful and there's nothing that they can do. And I would argue that we have to feel it, because if we don't feel it and we continue to push it off, then we will be continuing to act in unconscious ways and not be responsible. And I would also say that when we feel it, we bring it up for healing. We bring it into a healing presence. And in that moment, the pain can begin to shift and can begin to change, and then our relationships begin to change as well.
I loved the story you told in that chapter about the man named Chris on the beach. Would you share that with us? Because it's so important.
Yeah. So Chris was a very good friend of our family's, and sadly he died, and we went to his funeral. I didn't say that in the book, that the story happened at his funeral, but one of his friends, Peter, stood up and was talking to everybody and relating the story that had happened when he and his family had gone out with Chris and his family to the beach, and they're at the beach, and the kids, you know, all the kids are playing, and the adults are trying to have their adult conversations, and they're sitting on their blankets, and they're trying to do their adult things, and the kids are like, watch me, look at me do this, and you know, everyone's kind of casually glancing over, and it's like, yeah, that's good, that's nice, except for Chris, who's like giving them wrapped. All of his attention, every piece of his attention that he has, he's putting on these kids, and then, you know, they get bored and they go on and they're doing their things, and he turns to his friend Peter and he says, so what do you think? Attention is love.
Yeah, that's a really important one to underline, isn't it? Attention is love.
Yes, and then you think about how we use our attention, how we sit at dinner with each other and on our cell phones. You know, heartbreaking watching kids with parents out to dinner, and the kids are just sitting there waiting for their parents to get off their phone to pay some attention. And it's like, if your attention is your love, where are you putting your love? What are you loving?
Yeah, exactly. And you also say in that particular chapter that Native American tradition reveals that while we may have stopped paying attention to the earth and connecting to the earth has never stopped connecting with us.
Yeah, that was a very profound moment for me in conversations with Tiokasin. And actually that came out of a movie. I can't remember the name of it, One Planet. I think it was One Planet. It's an amazing documentary, and that came out of that documentary. And it was very, very poignant. It's like, for all that we have done, the earth has never stopped being there for us.
So when we start grounding, you make the point that Wilhelm Reich has said that when we start grounding, as we practice grounding, our muscles may reveal emotions held in the tension. We may feel sadness, loneliness, or shame that made our bodies an uncomfortable place to be. This is something that I hadn't really thought about a great deal before, and this is why, I've noticed that many of my friends in the spiritual arena, beautiful people, incredibly gifted people, don't ground easily, and they don't want to ground easily. And in many instances, it's shocking to discover that many of them have also had reasons to not want to ground because there has been so much pain in their bodies in the past, whether it's been, child abuse or something else. How do we move beyond that? I mean, what techniques do you recommend to help somebody like that ground? For myself, the healing path for me that, has been through body work, has been through, conscious, transformative body work. So, there are a lot of different kinds. There's simple massage and anything that you do really that brings your awareness to the muscle tension in a conscious way. I think that is an ever important thing, and that ability to go into a muscle tension, to feel the pain that's there, to allow the event that created that trauma memory to discharge its energy and give you the information that it's holding, and then integrating that information and and essentially, I guess at that point, letting go. In the pillar of clearing, that's a lot of what the pillar of clearing is about, is just clearing our energy field, clearing our karma, clearing the trauma patterns. And I think I need to say this at this point. Emotions, if we look into the political arena at this time, we can see that people are easily manipulated by their emotions. Emotions are an easily managed thing, and the reason that they are is because we are wired in our bodies to remember trauma, to hold on to trauma, and that's a survival thing to do that. But we also have, and so once we have this trauma memory, it can be stimulated very easily, and then we can be manipulated into different actions based on that fear or that anger or that pain. But we also have in our wiring this whole bliss thing, endorphins and the molecules of awareness that are made in the pineal gland. We have the DPT molecule. We have all of these whole other side of our brain that is geared towards bliss. And when we can shift into that side of the brain, the same problems are different. We can face the same thing in a different kind of way. Well said. Thank you, Synthia. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with author Synthia Andrews about her book, Past Present. We'll be back in a few moments. Don't go away.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatePR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children. troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearm storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. In the weeks after Erin's accident, you relate in the book that there were several occasions when you were surprised by her ability to respond to situations, to handle situations with such grace and ease when she was in so much pain. And you offer several examples of how she gave you a number of lessons in that. Particularly in things like, when we're that emotional, when things are, down to the wire as they were then, and you are dealing with something so important, it's very easy for us to get into conflict with people. How can cultivating presence help us resolve conflict in situations?
Immediately coming back into the present time, coming into your body, coming into your strength, coming into the pillar of honoring, which is really accepting that the world isn't here as a script for us, that we're all an integrated part of a greater whole, and that we have a place and they have a place, and just being able to honor what everybody is going through and what everybody needs in that moment, I think is a big part of it. But presence, it's an interesting question, really, because presence isn't really about manipulating the environment to suit your needs. Presence is about bringing something into the environment that is offering almost a way out for people, that it's offering a new way of looking, a new way of feeling, a new way of knowing yourself. So many people are locked into self-loathing, really self-hatred, just seeing themselves in the worst light possible, or never feeling like they're enough, just working all the time to just be enough. And what's it like to sit next to someone and just for no reason that you can understand, feel like you're enough, just because that person is transmitting something restful, something accepting, something non-judgmental, something that honors you, without ever saying a word. That to me is how presence changes things, and that's the power of it.
So how can these pillars help people who are facing overwhelming challenges? How can they help us overcome pain, loss, and fear? How can they help us awaken our inner power? I know that's a big questions there to ask you, but in a nutshell, what would you say to that?
I would say that each of us has within us innate abilities and inner strength and inner connection to our spiritual center that gets lost in day-to-day life, and that practicing these pillars, especially in those moments of crisis, as I had with my daughter, brings you back into that place within yourself so that you are acting from a higher place of awareness and consciousness, and therefore get a better result in what it is that you're trying to achieve. I know that if my daughter had died in this, or if she had been paralyzed, the path would have been much different. But I know that with these practices, I could have met it. And that's a big thing to say, but that was really how powerful the experience was.
Well, it's been almost 15 months now since the accident. How is Erin doing?
Well, she's riding horses again. In fact, she bought a horse, and she's riding it. And she took a fall 2 days ago, and we're riding together, and she takes a tumble, and I can tell you that moment was just as poignant as the phone call because you're expecting that she's going to fall apart, that she's going to break. And, she got back up. She got on the horse. She didn't break. But in these next 2 days since then, all of the trauma memory in her tissue from that car accident has been re-stimulated. So she's going through different things and remembering different things, and that's all happening.
Of these 8 pillars, was there one beyond the others that gave you, the most help during that period?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that each one of them gave me something so different to get through it. There was a moment where I would say that the pillar of balancing, and I think the story that I tell in the pillar of balancing, which is really about being able to maintain your internal state of being when everything outside of you is kind of doing whatever it's doing, and you have to hold on to your center and hold on to yourself. So that pillar of balancing, which is about making boundaries and knowing when to make a boundary and when to take it down, I think that one was probably one of the most important throughout this. I could have so easily gotten lost in my daughter's situation and given up my life and given up everything else, and I would have been useless to her had I done that. Like, there was a moment where I had to pull myself back and put up a boundary and not invest myself so completely, and that was for both of us, because she needed to know within herself what she was capable of doing as well, and if I took over for her, I would have been doing her a great disservice.
A very hard thing for a mother to hold back from.
It was very challenging many times.
I'm sure. We spoke earlier about the book being so timely, the message being so timely, and what people are needing right now in the face of everything that is going on externally. You have a segment towards the end of the book where you talk about the power of one. And, people saying, well, what can I do? I'm only one person. How can I make a difference? And you explain through our presence, how we can make a difference. Could you say a little bit about that now before we finish the show? Because I think people need to hear it.
I'm always really inspired by people who just get up and do things. And, and remember that, that we are bigger than that we think that we are, and that if we believe that we're powerless, it's like what Gandhi had said, that if we believe we're powerless, then the only course of action for us is violence, because that's the only way to defend ourselves. But if we know that we're powerful beings, that we have a soul force that can change the world, then we don't need violence, we don't need domination, we don't need to force things. We can sit back and we can use that soul force and allow the world to unfold in a much gentler and respectful way for everything. One of the things that had really inspired me on that was a woman named Maria Forleo, who had gotten involved in helping the Syrian refugees. And she had started by, she describes on her website that she is yelling at the TV, why isn't anyone doing anything about this, when suddenly she realizes that she is the anyone and that she needs to do something about it. So she gets involved with this group, the Compassion Collective, who are, taking care of these refugees. And their motto is, there's no such thing as other people's children. And to me, that represents so much of what this time is all about. It's with the holographic awareness, with the idea that we are all a part of something bigger. We have to stop thinking about us and them. We have to let go of dominance and domination and move back to every one of us matters, and everyone. We either all make it or none of us makes it. There is no such thing as some of us making it and and the rest of us not, because that's how important each of the issues is that we're facing now, whether it's the ecological crisis or the economic collapse of the world. It's like it's an all or none kind of situation here.
You're absolutely right, Synthia. I've loved all of your paths books, The Path of Emotions, The Path of Energy, The Path of Presence. This particular one, The Path of Presence, has been very, very impactful for me, and I highly recommend it to our viewers. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for sharing your journey and Erin's journey, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Sandie. I so appreciate your opportunity here.
Us too. Thank you, Synthia. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Synthia Andrews. You can find out more about Cynthia's work at her website, cynthiaandrews.com, and that is Synthia with an S. And the Path of Presence, 8 Awareness Expanding Energy Practices to Ignite Your Purpose is published by New Page Books and available at good bookshops and on Amazon. And you can also find out information on Cynthia's website about the energy awareness workshops and online classes that she is offering. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I hope you'll join me next week for another edition of What is Going On, when I'll be talking to teacher and author Byron Katie about her life and her work. Till then, it's goodbye from me.